name is Shaun,
And I'm Dave.
and this is an untitled podcast that Dave and I have decided to do out of sheer boredom to talk about movies and stuff. Does that sound good? Does that sound
Yeah,
good, everyone?
yeah,
Everyone involved?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
It's not just boredom; it's also the fact that we can't leave our homes,
There's
so
that.
our
There's a
our
few things.
options for entertaining ourselves were limited. So
There's,
we came up with this.
and we feel like if everyone else is trapped, that maybe someone will stumble onto this out of sheer boredom as well. So it'll be good for
Yeah,
everyone.
and we had a
Um,
really unique idea to sit down and talk about a movie that has definitely never been
no
reviewed
one's
in this
yeah.
format
No
before.
one's no one's done that. No one's reviewed this movie before. It's all
It's a little
completely
indie
unique.
flick.
You may have heard of it. We're going to be talking about Shaun of the Dead, which is one of my personal favorite movies. I don't know
Mine
about
as well.
yes, and we've seen it many times.
Uh,
Uh,
twice in the last 36 hours for
oh,
me.
did you watch it twice?
I did. I had to go back and watch it a second time. Well, I guess I didn't have to, but I chose to, and then I rewatched a couple of scenes independently a third time.
Okay,
So I
cool.
need to go back and check the dialogue on a couple of things that Nick Frost was talking about, and so yeah, great
Cool.
movie, and I would watch it again.
Well,
I was talking to Ashley, and she was saying that she had a hankering to watch it, but it was assuming that I had fulfilled. I had satiated my appetite for this film, but no, the thirst continues. I
nice.
would definitely watch it again.
I would too, and I was going to this morning. I watched it yesterday. I was going to watch it this morning, but as we were talking earlier, I just watched. I'm thinking about ending things, and that kind of killed my desire to watch movies for a little while. So I
Yeah.
didn't. I didn't watch. Didn't watch. Not that I hated it. It was just really long, and it sucked the life out of me.
No, I think that's an interesting point because whereas I think Edgar Wright is somebody that really fuels an appetite for filmmaking or for film watching. I think Charlie Kaufman is an exhausting watch,
He's like, I'm
so
gonna
it
take
has the
everything
opposite
you
effect.
love and kill it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree. I still liked it, but that's for another time, another place. We're gonna be talking about Shaun of the Dead. I don't know. Do you wanna sum up the plot for those who may not have seen it?
sure. Shaun of the Dead is a 2004 film by Edgar Wright starring Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It is the first feature film that Edgar Wright did, and the three of them, if you're not familiar, were famous at the time for being associated with the British sci-fi comedy series Spaced, and this film is actually based upon an episode of that show. It's a comedy horror movie that's sort of not necessarily a spoof, but sort of inspired by George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. As a matter of fact, the name of the film is a pun of that movie. For those of you in the know, and it's
That's some Charlie
uh,
Kaufman shit right there.
yeah,
You're
oh
just up
yeah,
your own ass.
yeah, right, very very up its own ass. So the movie takes place in Britain during a global pandemic that is essentially a zombie apocalypse, and the main protagonists of the film are the last two guys on Earth to realize that that's what's happening, and so most of the first act is just them, uh, you know, being boozy idiots, and then the second act is them sort of realizing what it is that's going on in the world. So yeah, it's a brilliantly done film. As far as I'm concerned, it's Edgar Wright's seminal work, which is kind of unfortunate because it's the first film that he did. But I think a lot of the stuff that he's done since then has been great too. Um, it's
Yeah.
also a film that features a number of faces that you'd recognize from other Edgar Wright movies,
Sure.
Bill Nighy and Martin, whatever his name is, the guy who played Bilbo in the Hobbit movies.
Right, which
Uh,
I didn't. This was the first time I watched it and realized that he was in it. I'm like, hey, it's
yeah,
that guy. Like that's
yeah,
funny.
because he has one line. It's
Yeah, right.
also a little mini reunion for the Jim and Pam of the British
Yeah,
Office.
I noticed that as well. That was
Yeah,
funny. Yeah,
although they didn't get a scene together, and I'm disappointed
it's too bad.
about that. Yeah.
It's too bad. Yeah. What you said about Edgar Wright, I mostly agree. I mean, he's done some stuff that I really like since, but yeah, I don't think anything's topped Shaun of the Dead, frankly.
Hmm.
Um, I really like Scott Pilgrim a lot, but
I do too.
that
You know,
comes
and
pretty close.
Hot Fuzz
Hot
is
Fuzz is
very
great
good as
too.
well, and it's so unfortunate that World's End is so unsatisfactory a capping
Yeah.
off of that of the Cornetto trilogy. Uh,
Um, but yeah, I agree. I think this is his best movie for sure. And I was gonna just comment on how there's like no fat in this movie at
right,
all. It is kind of astounding, like
yeah,
watching it and just like how every line, every scene, it all serves either the plot or it's referenced later, or it comes up again
yeah.
later, and it's just like this really wonderful. Like even if you're not paying attention at all in this movie, like it's a lot of fun to watch. But if you're paying even the slightest bit of attention, you just keep noticing, subtle nods to past events and lines and stuff. And it's really great. I don't know if you noticed anything that you hadn't noticed before watching it. I mean,
There were a couple of things actually that I came up with, and this was probably my I don't know. I've seen this movie several times, and it's one of those films that you're right. It's like you can sit down and watch it without any analytical perspective at all, without having ever seen the movie before, and get enjoyment out of it, and then you can watch it again for the hundredth time while preparing for an analytical discussion on it and
right,
still get enjoyment out of the film. And I think that that is I think that that's really a hallmark of Edgar Wright's work. Is that a lot of his best movies do that? That they're just as good on the first pass through as they are on the 50th, and you can watch them over and over again.
right,
I find it really interesting because I was thinking about that too. Is that every scene really is really there for a specific purpose, and that it drives the plot of the film forward, or it calls back to something that happened earlier. The fact that he was attached to direct a Marvel movie. It was the Ant-Man movie. He was attached to write and direct for like 10 years and then dropped out of it like right before it went into pre-production. The fact that he, you know, was going to direct a Marvel movie is kind of funny because
that's
those
kind of
movies are the
yeah,
exact opposite of, there's so much like random crap. Like if you go back and watch the like any DVD extra features and look at the deleted scenes, and you're like, well, why did they even film this? This like this makes no real difference to anything that's happening. So I think that's, and they've talked about Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright have talked about the benefits of having sort of a creative through line from writer to actor to director, and having sort of the
sure.
same the same creative hand on the rudder the whole way through. This is the kind of work that you can get, um, and it shows.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have one that you can recall that you noticed watching that you hadn't watched before?
Oh, well, I noticed that that guy you were talking about, noticing Martin. What the hell is that guy's name? The guy who plays
I
Bilbo.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't remember his
well,
name.
so in that same group is the guy who plays the mirror version of Ed. Nick Frost's character is the same guy from Little Britain, USA. Lucas something. So I really like that, and I also noticed at the very end, because when they meet, the whole plot of the movie is ridiculous. It's like they have a leader that wants to take them to a bar during the zombie apocalypse
Yes.
and save them there, and that's just, it goes about as well as you would think that it does.
Right.
And when they meet that mirrored group of themselves, and they're going in the opposite direction, and you're thinking, oh well, okay, that like they're the ones that are like the protagonists of
A different
sort
movie.
of a, yeah, right, like a Left for Dead or Resident Evil or whatever. Like they're the ones that are leading the action movie. When she shows up again, when the
With
his,
with the army and everyone, yeah.
yeah, none of her group is there, and
Mhm.
what she says to them is, "Oh, I'm glad somebody made it out alive,"
Right.
implying that, that, like, okay, well, you lost a few people along the way, but she may have lost everybody because nobody's there. So I
That's
like the fact
possible.
that
Yeah.
it's possible that Simon Pegg was actually more
More successful.
successful at saving his friends than she was.
Yeah, I don't know that yeah, I didn't really catch that either. I just thought she was like trying to console him like, "Well, I'm glad you did okay."
Right. Yes. Yeah. You
But it
did
could go
just
it
fine.
could go either way, I guess. But yeah, I do like that she's back with the army, like, because that's what you should have been doing. Like, that's what a
Hmm.
semi-competent person would have tried to go do, not go to the bar that's like your girlfriend's like the last place on earth that she wants to be. You have to convince her to go there one more time. Yeah, that's pretty good. Um, One part that I noticed that it kind of to my shame because it's not even really that subtle, but I just never noticed it before, is when Shaun and Ed are playing oh, they're playing a video game. What is it called? Time Splitters. They're playing Time Splitters. I just know that because I used to have that game. Um, and
Oh yeah,
and
PS2, going way back.
yeah, yeah. And Shaun sits down to play with them, and he's telling him when to reload and stuff, and like that
Right,
goes,
right,
and then that plays
yeah,
into them in the bar fighting the
right. Top
zombies.
left.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Reload, I'm on it. Yeah, so
yeah.
that stuff is really cool, and it's stuff that doesn't seem important at all in the moment unless you're paying attention. So
Right,
I
and
really
those are the kinds of things that add a depth to this movie that makes it enjoyable to watch 100 times over again, as opposed to other movies that are sort of a one-off.
right.
I know that this movie is very like there's a lot of Easter eggs and references to the horror genre in general, but there's also a lot of stuff that they reference in which they reference their old show, Spaced, which is not a show. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I
I
haven't, and I
I
read a
haven't
bit
either.
after, while researching stuff, and so I'm gonna have to go back and watch that now because it seems like there's
Yeah,
probably a lot of good stuff in there too. I know
it's
the one thing I know about it is that that's how they recruited the extras for the zombies.
yeah,
Did you see
yes,
that? Yeah,
yeah.
they went on a spaced fan site and recruited people off the site to be extras in the movie. I thought that was pretty cool.
One of the other things about that is that I read that they only paid the extras £1 per day, which in the article that I was reading said that it was a reference to how George Romero only paid his zombie extras $1 a day, and I gotta
They're
think that
they're like, yes,
that,
this is a reference to that. Isn't that
yeah,
clever? Here's your dollar.
definitely not because we're cheap assholes. And it's probably not an unrelated fact that the original production company for this movie like went bankrupt or something
Oh, did it?
during pre-production, or they had a budget shortfall or something, and so this movie ended up, after it had been picked up for production the first time, ended up sort of languishing in this sort of purgatory of being attached to a studio and having no money to actually make it. And
Right.
Edgar Wright talked about how the fact that he wanted to make this movie so badly that he turned down several other jobs, in maybe not in protest, but just wanting to keep himself available for when money became available.
Did this movie make
Um,
money? I didn't
it
even look at
did.
that.
It
Okay.
did. It only cost, and so there were a couple of figures I saw that contradicted each other, but it said that it cost about 6 million to make, and it ended up making about 30 at the box
Okay.
office. So it turned a profit.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I'm
Yeah,
glad those guys did okay back then.
and it debuted, and so for its national or international release, it was picked up by Universal, which 2 weeks before this movie debuted also put out the Dawn of the Dead
Yes,
remake
I did
by
see
Zack
that.
Snyder.
Yeah. Which is probably Zack Snyder's best movie, to be fair. I
Uh,
like the remake.
yeah. Well, that's a debate for another time.
um, so yeah, going back to the movie, I did want to talk about a few different aspects of it. One thing I really appreciate in this movie is how they introduce all the characters. It's really effortless and extremely effective. And when I mean characters, I don't even mean like just like the actors who play Ed and Diane and David in the bar at the beginning, which I think is really good. But like even silly stuff like the jukebox, like how that's referenced the juke you know about the jukebox before they come back,
Right.
and the jukebox like kind of ruins ruins their day.
Yes.
Um, it's
And it ruins his day when it first comes on too.
right, yeah, exactly, right. It plays a super, what does it play? It plays
Uh, oh, it's
shit. It plays a super depressing song. He's there because
yeah.
his wife.
How could you leave me, or you're leaving me now, or
Oh, who
something
leave
something
me
like that.
now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the one.
I'm not
You
gonna
have
sing it
the voice of
anymore.
an angel, by the way.
um, yeah. So just stuff like that, I think they do a really good job with. It because at first the first shot is just Shaun and Liz talking, and like it's clear they're having relationship problems, and then just like one by one you're introduced to like all these characters surrounding them who are like part of the who are part of the problem, and the atmosphere is part of the problem. And
Yes.
it does a really good job of introducing those characters. Also, I wanted to say too, I think they do a really good job with Liz. um Specifically, I think it's really hard to have like a girlfriend. Like if your protagonist is a man and they have a girlfriend who breaks up with them, it's usual that like you end up hating the girlfriend for
Yes.
and they don't do that at all. You really
Yeah.
like her, and you definitely see her point of view, why she's breaking up with him. uh
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think that that's great. I wanted to talk about her for a second too, because while I liked her very much, and I don't think that she should have been replaced at all. One of the things that I read about the casting for this movie was that they had originally offered the role of Sean's mom to Helen Mirren, and she
oh
turned it
really?
down. She turned it down because she wanted a better part.
Oh,
So
what?
she should have been the girlfriend. I mean, I think the May December romance aspect of a relationship between her and Shaun would have been an additional avenue of humor that they could have gone down, and it's just kind of a shame that that
That
didn't
would have been
take
so
place.
weird though. You think that would have worked?
Well, I
she's so
maybe
she's so
not.
much she's
I
so
don't
much older
know.
than him. That doesn't make any sense.
I said May December. I mean, I don't know. I'd Helen Mirren's hot, man.
I
And this movie is 17 years ago, so
I
she could
guess. So I mean, she's like in her 70s, so I don't know.
whatever.
Still,
Opportunities lost.
sure. they're like they're like, hey, we'd like you to play the mom. You're like, nope, girlfriend.
Actually, who she should have been? She should have had Bill Nye's role, and she should have been his stepmom. Uh, you know,
Who's stepmom?
Sean's.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sure,
I
I
just
guess.
think that not that Bill Nye needed to be recast either, because I thought he was brilliant. I just really now that I've seen that Helen Mirren was almost in this movie, I just really want her to be in this movie, and there are no great real places for her to fit into the story. But it's just a shame that she could have been there and wasn't.
Um, I liked who played his mom, Barbara. I don't know her name offhand.
Neither do I. I read it. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah,
I
she's.
did. I did read that her nickname for Sean, Pickle, is
Uh,
the nickname that Edgar Wright's mom had for him, and I guess she was his primary school teacher, and it was like a just like this big, shameful. Like he felt a lot of shame about being called Pickle in front of all of his classmates.
that's really funny. Yeah, I don't know. Was there a particular scene you wanted to talk about, or?
Well, there are a couple that I love, and so let's talk about the first scene that they filmed during this during the shoot. So I saw that Simon Pegg had said that the first scene that they filmed on the first day was that long transition shot when he goes to get the Coronetto and the Coke in
Mm-hmm.
the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they filmed the zombie version of that scene first, and then in the afternoon they filmed the regular version. And because it was so
That
difficult to
seems hard. It
film,
seems harder to do it that way. That's interesting. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm not sure why they decided to do it in that order, but I think it had to do with Edgar Wright wanting to get the hardest thing out of the way first and really set the tone for
Okay.
what the filmmaking experience was going to be like. And I think it also sets the tone for what his whole filmmaking career has been. That it's very deliberate. Uh, there, as you said earlier, there is no fat on anything. Everything's going to be a little bit more difficult, but it's going to be totally worth it in the end. And I think that that has been sort of a hallmark of his career going forward. And I love anytime I see a long continuous shot with no breaks. I'm really impressed. And this one is I don't know if they were actually outside, but they have exterior lighting, right? So you go from inside to outside to inside again in
Mm-hmm.
the same shot, and then they do it again
Yeah.
with the zombies, and I just that cannot have been easy, and they didn't have to do it that way, and the fact that they did just makes the whole movie that much more enjoyable.
it really emphasizes his complete cluelessness of what's going
Yes.
on
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
seeing
Him.
all of this around him.
Yeah. Well, I particularly like, the beginning of the movie, and the original shot when he goes to get the coke in the first scene, as well as the scenes of him like going to work and being surrounded by other people that are on their daily commute. There's, and him yawning at the very beginning of the movie when you think it kind of sounds like a zombie.
Hmm.
There's so much of like this motif that, like, we're not that far away from from doing exactly what these zombies do. And
Right.
then the fact that at the end of the movie, these zombies that are left over are so easily transitioned into like manual menial labor. Like we're pretty close as it is. Like, you can still play video games and, put the trolleys back in the where they're supposed to go at
Right.
the
Or
supermarket.
be the
So
basis of a talk show.
yeah. Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly, exactly.
um, I'm looking at my notes to see if there's any scene in particular I want to talk about. I mean, my favorite scene is almost certainly the Queen scene,
Oh yeah,
just because
yes.
of how great that all comes together. The scene where Queen starts blaring, "Don't Stop Me Now," starts blaring over the
Yeah.
jukebox, and they, it's really funny just throughout the movie uh, how unaffected how poorly they deal with like fighting zombies. They like pick
So
the
bad.
worst they pick the worst tools possible and the worst methods possible, and it kind of works out on accident sometimes. But yeah, they're like beating this guy with pool sticks just in beat to the music, and it's just like not really doing anything. It's stalling
Yes.
him, but he's not dying. um or when uh or when they're going through the yards and they toss Shaun that metal pole with the ball on the
Yeah.
end, and he smacks it with the ball. He's like, "No, this is rubbish." Like, no, stab him with the metal pole. I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But yeah, they do that. They do that a lot through the movie, and it's endlessly funny. Or at the very beginning when they run into their first zombie, uh, when they start just throwing kitchen utensils, they just have a
Right.
drawer of kitchen utensils, and they just start throwing it at her. And it's a good thing that these are like Romero style zombies, and and not 48 hours, or what movie am I referencing?
28 days later.
28 days later, 48 hours later.
48
That's too
hours.
soon. That's too soon. The running kind of zombies. They're just like these slow, stupid zombies. It's
Hmm.
really the only way they lived through this whole thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I heard a quote from Simon Pegg on that about why they used slow zombies instead of the fast ones, and he said, "Death is not an energy drink."
That's true. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I don't think I think that the zombies are very much the backdrop of this whole movie. So it's good that they didn't make them like super scary or super imposing. I mean, at the very
Hmm.
end that they definitely are because there's like a billion of them and they're cornered. But yeah,
Right.
it's mostly just about Shaun, trying to get his shit together. His life is in chaos, like the world is in chaos. And he has to prioritize, what's important to him, and
Yeah.
straight as he writes on his whiteboard, straighten your life out.
Straighten your life out. Get Liz back. And then he does.
Yeah, he does. He accomplishes everything, which is great. Um,
Well, I like too that, like, the motif is, you will be presented with an opportunity to rise to an occasion, and you sort of fulfill your potential,
mhm.
or you die and get eaten by zombies. I mean, like, those are your options. Like
Right.
you sort of, like, uh, uh, faffed around and not really done anything with your whole life because you had that option, but now it's, move or die. So what's it going to be? And I kind of like that, that as the inciting incident of the film is an interesting one.
Uh, One thing I really like that I didn't entirely put together before is, well, Ed, it represents, everything that Liz hates about, like, she doesn't hate Ed, but she hates that,
Yeah.
he's perfectly content, playing video games and not doing anything with his life, and Ed is kind of the person who encourages that behavior, keeps
Uh-huh.
going back to the bar. I really like at the end, after it's pretty clear that Ed is going to die, he tells Shaun, like, Shaun wants him to come with him, and he says, "I'll only hold you back," and that's what everyone's
Right.
been telling him throughout the whole movie is like how Ed holds you back, and so it's like his little selfless act to let Shaun like go forward. I thought that was a really cool part. Um,
Yeah, I think it's also, a nod to the fact that movie characters and maybe people in general find it easier to be selfless when they're on their deathbed.
sure. True. That's true. Um,
It's like only got to hold the altruism together for like the next 90 seconds or so, and then I'm gonna be devoured. So
yeah, it's really yeah. I just might as well look good before I kick the
yeah,
bucket here. Um, it's pretty. It gets it's pretty emotional end of that movie because it's pretty much
yeah.
all laughs up to that point, but it's kind of
Well, I mean,
starts with
it's
his mom dying,
yeah,
which is
right. He has to
super
execute his
fucking
own
sad.
mother.
Yeah.
I heard that scene took a sort of a hard emotional toll on the actors too.
Oh really?
Yeah, it took them a while to recover from doing that.
Yeah, you and it's a lot of emotional swings too because it's the sadness of his mom and to some extent his stepdad who he just at the last minute
Hmm.
kind of understood and accepted before he dies, but mostly the mom, and then it like swings into fucking David being a douche, uh,
Yeah,
um, and
yeah,
anger towards his character. His character is kind of strange, um, and then he looks like he's gonna have a character turn as well, but then he gets ripped apart by
it
son
ripped
of a bitch.
apart.
And
Yeah,
really, that effect is just great. It doesn't make any sense how they rip him open like he's like butter, but
yeah,
it's still it plays really well. Um, uh, but yeah, so between that, his mom dying, David dying, uh, uh, what's David's girlfriend's name? Diane.
Diane. Yeah.
She I guess dies. You don't really see it. She just kind of.
No, she doesn't. I wanted to bring this up later, but
Oh,
since you mentioned it now, there are a series of animated shorts that were released with this movie called Plot Holes that like wraps up like unresolved plot points. Evidently, her character gets away, uh,
wow.
runs in, hides in a tree, wakes up later and is too afraid to come down, so she stays in the tree for several days, sustaining herself by eating the severed leg of her ex-boyfriend.
That came out with the like during the same time as the
I think
movie
it said
or
it
around
came
the
out
same.
in it came out in 2004, so I think it was one
Wow,
of several little animated shorts that
that's
came out like
hilarious.
with the DVD. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. How does that resolve itself? Did you watch them?
I have not. I watched the plot. I watched I read the plot summary rather of what it is, and so like it ends by saying that she's still in quote Christmas card contact with Shaun and Liz.
That's hilarious. All right, well, good. I'm glad Diane.
So Diane
So
lives.
hey, we had three survivors. That's pretty good
Beating the odds for sure.
for sure. What was I talking about? Oh, just the people dying. Yeah, and then Ed dies, and so yeah, there's quite an emotional hit at the end of the movie. Which brings me to a point that I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, if you had to fault any point of this movie, what would it be, if at all? If you had any issues with it?
I don't know that I really have any issues with this movie. I think that, the way that they structured the film, makes I know that there were rumors of a possible sequel coming in which he fights vampires.
Oh, I would not like that. I don't think.
But they're not. I mean, they've talked about how they thought about doing it, but they're definitely not going to.
Okay.
Mostly because Ed's dead, and it doesn't really work with the.
Yeah, it's like
It
just
just
have
wouldn't
those
work.
actors back and do that thing, but it doesn't need to be
Right.
Shaun. I mean, it's
Right.
just like
And they
leave them
did.
alone.
They kind of did. I mean, Hot Fuzz is the
Right,
sequel.
exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. The one thing that I'll say, it's sort of a mashup of genres where you've got like these big zombie action movies that are kind of an American film practice, and you've got this very British comedy that can maybe go over your head if you don't, uh, if, if you're not sort of familiar with jargon or sort of general comedic motifs in British comedy. But I think that it works well together.
Yeah, it definitely translates really well.
So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you had something
Well,
specific that you
it's
wanted to
not.
mention.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that it's. I don't know. I wouldn't even want to call it a fault. It's like it's something that's always stuck with me every time that I watch this movie, and that's the very end when you find out that he recovered Ed's body, who's now a
Oh yeah.
zombie, and like it's really just a philosophical thing of like, is that really Ed? Like, should I feel happy about this? Is this like fucked up? Like, I don't know. Like, it's.
Oh, yeah, actually, I kind of like that because he's in the shed, right,
Mhm.
where he's got his PlayStation and a lot and his dead best friend and several other like artifacts of his former life.
Mhm.
Because the interior of the home that he now shares with Liz is like clean and she's there, and
And
it's
she's
like
there.
it's noticeably brighter. Like it's better than the bachelor pad that he gave up, but he didn't give up every single aspect of his former bachelor life. Like he still takes the time to go be a lazy drunk in the morning and hang out with his friend in the shed. And
Right.
yeah, it's like it's the uh, the storage center, where you keep all of the affects of your previous life. And
He's
I
just
think
in
that
there.
works.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think it works, and I think it's fine. It's just if it's definitely not something I think you're supposed to dwell on too much. It's just
right.
that if I sit and think about it, like, man, that's kind of fucked up. He just sits in the shed. Like, does he have to feed him, brains? Like, I don't. How does he keep
Yeah,
him going? Like,
yeah.
there's so much to unpack there. But yeah, I mean, I think overall the ending's really good. I also like too, you're talking about him living with Liz and how it's a lot different than his bachelor pad. But they talk about their plans for the day, and it sounds like they have come to a compromise with how their lives are going to be. I mean, they talk about going. She mentions going to the Winchester, doesn't she, or the bar? I can't remember, or the
Uh,
pub.
yeah.
They talk about something. Um, but yeah,
Oh no, they talk about what they're gonna do that day, and there's
right.
like a farmer's market in the morning or something, but they also
But
go
then they
to a
go to the pub.
bar
Yeah,
at
and then they
night.
go to the
Yeah,
pub or something. I don't know if they
yeah.
mentioned the Winchester specifically.
Compromise.
Yeah. So it's not, it's not like she's asking him to change all that much. Which again kind of goes back to her being a very likable character. She just wanted
Yeah.
him
Well,
to
yeah, because
not to
she
be a
shows
total.
flexibility. Yeah, and
Right.
was unable to do that earlier.
Right. Um. So yeah, I don't know that I have too much more I wanted to mention. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
There are a couple things that I wanted to mention that I find interesting. I think the first is just something I wanted to note that I love about. I think every Edgar Wright movie does this, but as this is the first and the one that we're talking about, I'll mention it here. Is that I love the sort of actiony transition scenes that he uses for like
Oh
mundane
yeah,
tasks.
the
Like
editing in general is
yeah, the
fantastic.
editing is phenomenal, but I love how like the tying shoes and like buttering toast is like this
Right.
because
Because he's
the
not an
action.
action hero. It's like
Yeah,
this is as exciting as it gets.
but that's exactly the point though, is
Yeah.
because even when you are watching an action movie like Rambo or whatever, the action transition is supposed to be evocative of like the emotional state and the viewpoint of the protagonist, and it makes sense to you as the viewer, because you understand why there's so much tension and like a certain level of magnitude around this moment. But it's the same thing here, because those are the things that are like the most important parts of the day to Shaun, the things that he
Right.
has to like gear up for to do. So I really like that. I also really like the foreshadowing scene when Ed is talking to Shaun at the Winchester, when he has just been dumped, and he's talking about what they're going to do the next day and how it foreshadows the rest of the plot of the film.
What does he say specifically?
He says, okay, so I know what we should do tomorrow. We're gonna drink all day. And he says the first thing we're gonna do is have a Bloody Mary in the garden. We'll have a bite.
That's right.
We'll
Yep,
have
I
a
remember.
we'll have a bite at the King's Head, a couple at the Little Princess, which is a reference to David and Diane Liz. We'll stagger back here, imitating the zombies, and bang back here for shots.
Yep.
so so
Yeah.
I love that. I also love the little conversation between Ed and the third roommate, Pete, who played
Yeah. Pete's great.
Ronan the Accuser in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Uh huh.
Um, he says, "You want to live like an animal? Go live in the shed." And Ed says, "Next time I see him, he's dead."
Yep.
And he is.
All true.
so so those are all great. I guess the last thing I wanted to mention was something I had read about Edgar Wright's own experiences influencing the way that the plot of the film developed, and he was talking about how during the hoof and mouth epidemic in 2001, he hadn't been watching the news, so
Oh
he
shit.
turned on the TV one day and saw a bunch of cows that were being burned, and he didn't understand. He didn't understand what was happening.
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly how this goes down. Just
yeah.
completely oblivious. That's really
Uh,
funny.
so that's phenomenal, and and the fact that he's like, I want my protagonists to be the last two people on Earth that would know that this was happening. Like it's happening around them, and they have no idea. Um, the one the one other thing that I wanted to mention is that there's a in the Cornetto trilogy there is a running gag of the fence hopping the thing, and this is the first one that happens when he tries to jump over the fence
And it
and it
just falls. Yeah.
collapses on him.
Uh,
So yeah.
do you have any lines that you find particularly funny?
Um, I mean, there are so many. I think I've said a few of them already, but which ones
Oh,
were
I don't
sticking
know.
out to you?
I wrote down a few that always make me laugh extra hard. I think one of my favorites is when Sean's talking to his mom about his stepdad. He says he touched me, and she turns
Yeah, yeah,
around. She turns around and just looks at him. He's like, That's not true."
that's not true. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, that's pretty great.
um,
There's one where Sean is talking to Ed about what they're supposed to do in the event of this apocalypse, because Ed wants to go out and fight the zombies. Uh, and Sean says, "But the man said," and Ed says, "Fuck the man."
fuck the man. Yeah, Ed's great in this. He's just such a good character. Um, I'm just looking through my lines. When he asks his mom, "Have you been bitten?" No, but Philip has. He's like, "Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine."
Oh, okay.
I love his daydream about his plan, him envisioning his plan about how he's gonna rescue his mom and Liz, and like it always involves like them killing Philip,
Yeah.
in the next scene, like he's whisking his mom away, who's just got like this big smile on her
Yeah.
face, like nothing bad happened. Just like
Yeah.
ideally, that's how it would all go down. This is not how it goes down.
Uh,
Um,
did you want to talk at all about the parallel between this pandemic and the one that we are actually living through currently?
uh, how many parallels can you draw other than the fact that I always choose movies to distract myself that always involve like
Yeah.
parallels to what's happening right now, and it's always on accident. Like I never think about it. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, there's zombies in this, and there's like a big pandemic, or there's illness, or there's something. So yeah, what did you think?
Well, really, I mean, I really wanted to talk about the fact that these two characters, the two protagonists of this movie, are about as uninformed as two people can be, and they deliberately ignore the recommended actions from their government. And so they're like, we know better. We don't need to stay inside. We can
Right.
go out there, and then at the end of the and of course, if they had stayed inside, they may have been better off or not. I don't know, but the fact that they go out and enact this ridiculous plan to go to the bar, and it causes several of their friends to die, and you got to be thinking, well, that could have gone better. And then the government shows up finally, and instead of having a cure, they have machine guns and they
Right.
fucking kill everybody that's infected.
Problem
uh,
solved.
yeah. so
You
so
have to
yeah I
wonder, like, I mean, Liz's apartment had to have been the best place to stay, right? I mean, there's no way
Yeah,
those zombies were getting up there. That was totally
right.
fine. But he still talks them out. It's really funny.
Because he barely makes it up onto the terrace, and the zombies are, if anything, slightly less athletic than Simon Pegg.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Liz's apartment, right? Because Diane and
They all
Mac.
live there.
Oh, did they all live there? Okay.
I think they mentioned that they were roommates. Yeah,
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
or flatmates.
Flatmates. Oh yes, that's right. You can translate for me.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll use my flawless British accent as well. That'll help with the immersion.
Um, any final thoughts?
Any final thoughts? I don't think so. This was a great movie. I really like it. Definitely going to be watching it again. Uh, I don't know that it's a flawless film necessarily, but it gave birth to one of my favorite directors, and I think this is his best movie. But there are like uh, I really liked the spiritual sequel to this movie, Hot Fuzz, and did not like the third one. World's End is not very good, but I liked
Right.
Scott Pilgrim is really good, and I really liked Baby Driver a lot too. I think that he is a really talented director, and there's that new he's got a new movie coming out with with Anna Taylor Joy from the New Mutants movie.
Mm.
That should be pretty good. It's like this sort of like a psychological thriller thing about an actress who goes back in time, and it's supposed to be pretty. It looks like it could be pretty good. So I really like I also really like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. So this movie is just like sort of a it's like an origin point for a lot of creators that I really enjoy, and it's very good.
Yeah,
Highly recommend.
they're a good pairing for sure. But yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I think
Oh,
that's all. Oh,
we didn't talk about. There's one other thing. We didn't talk about the name of the trilogy and the
oh yeah, I was gonna have you explain that if.
yeah. So the name of the trilogy of these three films is called the Flavors of Coronetto trilogy, and it is a reference to their. I mean, the films are very loosely tied to one another. I don't know that the events of any one plot
Yeah,
affect the events of another, and none of the characters are the same. But it's basically like a running inside joke over three movies with the same creative team. So I don't know whether that makes it a trilogy
it's
necessarily, but
basically the only tie-in is that it's the
yeah.
same people.
But the flavors of each of the ice creams that are featured in the three films actually have like some kind of import. So in the first one, the flavor of ice cream that Ed eats is strawberry, and it's red because it's evocative of blood for this movie. In the next one, Hot Fuzz, the one that's featured is vanilla because the label is blue for the police, and in the third one, in World's End, which is about an alien invasion, it's mint chocolate chip, which is green for the extraterrestrial theme. And so there's at least something there.
There is something there.
Although it's not really a whole lot, and now that I think about the amount of time that it took me to explain this, I'm not sure that it was really worth it. But
But
there
now we
we
know.
are.
There it is. That's a good place to wrap up. So cool. This was fun. And yeah, we'll do it again probably sometime soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.